Hey guys, Mike here. In this video, I'm going to explain the missing piece to truly mastering your weapon. So have you ever learned your weapon, you know all the moves, you know all the combos, you may have even used it in a bunch of hunts, but you just don't have a feel for the rhythm of the weapon. Well, there's one key thing that happens between each combo attack that you do, and this is the key to mastering your weapon, and it's understanding the weapon's movement speed. Now, as you may know, all the weapons in Monster Hunter have different movement speeds, and this movement speed greatly affects how you play defense, as well as dictates how you start your combos. So what I did was I calculated the movement speed for every single weapon. I'm going to show it to you. So what I'm showing are the total number of frames it takes to travel roughly the distance of the length of a Rathian's head. So here it is. Sword and shield, great sword, lance, dual blades, gun lance, hammer, hunting horn, longsword, insect glaive with a white buff, switch axe with axe mode, switch axe sword mode, charge blade axe mode. So you can see here the slowest weapons are great sword, lance, gun lance, switch axe in sword mode, charge blade in axe mode, and gun lance is a little bit faster than the other ones, but still pretty slow. Now, for a frame of reference, 60 frames equals 1 second. So you can see all of these red weapons take just under a second to travel the length of a Rathian's head. And we got our fast weapons here, which are sword and shield at 27, dual blades 25, hammer 27, insect glaive with a white buff 23. It's actually the fastest. And we have these medium ones. They're still pretty fast in all honesty because they are pretty close to the 25-27 frame mark. But we have longsword at 30, insect glaive without the white buff at 30, switch axe and axe mode at 31, charge blade at 30. And then we have this outlier here, which is hunting horn at 42 frames, so it's in orange. So why is this important to know? Well, if you're playing any of these green or yellow weapons, this means it's perfectly viable to move unsheathed to get into position to attack the monster. If I'm about half a Rathian's head away from the monster, I can just walk there and use a stationary combo starter and go from there. And usually the stationary combo starters do more damage than the gap closers. For example, insect glaive, the leaping slash, does not do that much damage, but it covers a large distance. Whereas if you are standing right next to the target part and you use a stationary combo starter like SRS-C, that actually does a lot of damage. So that dictates how you engage upon the monster with each combo starter, because you don't want to do the leaping slash if you're already close to the monster and you can just inch towards the monster because you won't do as much damage. Conversely, if I'm farther from the monster and if I'm about a Rathian's head's distance away from the monster, then I would use the gap closer on the insect glaive to quickly cover the distance as well as do damage, rather than taking 30 frames or a half second just to walk to the monster part and start the attack. So it's not as DPS efficient. And this is where all the moves in a weapon's moveset have some sort of utility and purpose. So even though it doesn't do as much damage on paper, because it can have utility like gap closing, its effective DPS is the highest amount you can possibly get for that situation. Another major takeaway is that for these fast weapons like sword and shield and dual blades, you don't really want to roll to gap close, or at the very least if you don't need to evade a monster attack or iframe a monster attack, because there's an associated animation lock with the roll which costs frames, and there's also a recovery period on the roll when you get out of the roll that costs more frames. So with these fast weapons with high mobility, you always want to ask yourself, can I just sidestep the move? Because that will save me all those frames from rolling and entering the roll recovery. And those frames that you save translate directly into damage and DPS. Alternatively, these very slow weapons like Great Sword, as well as the slow forms in Switch Axe and Charge Blade, you don't want to be hobbling because it takes 1 whole second just to move like this distance right here. That's very expensive because that's eating into your damage window time. Remember, 1 whole second is actually about 30% of the damage in a 3-second window. So spending your time hobbling with these slow weapons is actually more expensive than you may think from a damage perspective. Now, Switch Axe and Charge Blade have ways to get around this by just transforming back into its faster mode. For Switch Axe, you can transform back into Axe mode, which is faster. And for Charge Blade, you can switch back into Sword and Shield mode, which is the faster movement. Great Sword gets around this by rolling and sheathing so that it has access to sprint. Lance has other options with hopping, as well as using charge for covering large distances that need to be gap closed. Again, Lance doesn't want to sheath at all. Gun Lance, similar to Lance, can hop as well. Now, lastly, the medium weapons like Longsword, Insect Glaive. These are actually really flexible. Their sheaths don't actually take that long. If you need a sheath to cover distance, it's not a bad idea to do that. Now, Insect Glaive obviously has other options for larger gap closes like vaulting and doing an advancing aerial slash, but I would view these yellow weapons as they can do anything. They can move pretty comfortably unsheathed. They can sheath pretty quickly and start sprinting. Hope this got you thinking about movement and its effect on your damage. The main takeaway is that the frames are pretty significant, that they can eat into your damage window. So understanding your movement and understanding how your weapon's moveset can compensate for this movement through gap closers or stationary combo starters will allow you to maximize damage and master your weapon. Hope that helped, and thanks for watching.